Welcome back to Philosophy 101. What does it mean to be human? The purpose of this video will be to cover the guidelines for the two exams that we're going to take in this course. And I think the first place we should start is by taking a look at the syllabus and reminding ourselves of when these exams will take place. So if we open the syllabus up on Moodle, go to the course schedule, there are two exams in this course, and you'll recall that I told you earlier that the second one is not cumulative. So the first exam, which you can see will take place in week 8, the week of March the 1st, that just covers everything in the first half of the course. And then the second exam will take place during final exam week, the week of April 26th, and that will cover everything in the second half of the course. Okay, so you can see there the weeks that the exams are taking place. And with that in place, I want to go through basically what the format of the exam will be, what you can expect, how you can submit it, and what you should be keeping in mind that I'll be looking for when I'm grading your exam. So the best place to go here is, let's take a look at the study guide for exam 1. I'm just going to focus on exam 1 here because everything I say about exam 1 is also going to apply to exam 2. The format's exactly the same. The only thing that's different is, of course, the content that will be on the exam, but there's nothing different in terms of the nuts and bolts and the actual format of it. So the study guides for the exams you can find in two places on Moodle, right? So right now I'm in the general course information and resources area, and you can find the study guides for the exams here. So here's the exam 1 study guide, and there's the exam 2 study guide. You can also find the study guides in the area of the course for the week in which the exam will take place. So if we're talking about exam 1, that takes place in week 8. So we scroll down and here is that same document. So let's go ahead and open that up. All right, so let's go through some points about the format of the exam. So the format of the exam will be the following. You will be required to answer 2 essay questions. Each of those essay questions is worth 100 points, and so together the exam is worth 200 points, which makes each exam individually worth 25% of your grade, and the exams together worth 50% of your grade. So I really do encourage you to take the assignment seriously, to put a great deal of effort toward it, because the way you score in the exam will ultimately go a large distance to determining what your final grade is in the course. Okay, so you have to respond to these 2 essay questions. We might say, well, where are these questions coming from? How should I prepare? That's an excellent question, and this is the main thing the study guide provides for you. So the 2 questions that you have to answer on each exam will be selected from the list that can be found in the study guide. So if you scroll down, for instance, here's the first possible essay question. There's the second one, third, fourth, and if we went all the way down, there are 6 possible essay questions for exam 1. And then there are going to be 5 possible essay questions for exam 2. So I'm going to walk through one of these prompts with you to say a few things about it a little later in this video. But the thing to know for now is that is where you can find the possible essays that you will see on the exams. And so the thing you should notice is that, of course, you have access to these possible essays right now. And I've set this up intentionally so that it gives you the ability to prepare gradually and consistently throughout the course of the semester. What I would suggest in order to be best prepared for the exam is that after we cover the material for one of the essay questions, go ahead and start to write out your answer to it. It'll be most fresh in your mind, it'll be something we have just covered, and in addition, if you already have some rough drafts of all 6 of these essays by the time you get to exam week, then just think about how much easier your life will be. You won't be scrambling to get the essays together before the deadline. You'll already have most of the work done, maybe just expanding on your answers, tightening things up a little bit, but for the most part your work will be done. It'll make your life a lot easier around the middle of the semester and the end of the semester when you likely have assignments for other classes and your life is going to be most hectic. So I've set it up that way intentionally. Okay, so that's the basic format of the exam. That's where you can find the possible essays. Let's say something a little bit about the mechanics of the exam. So first, I've hinted at the fact that each exam takes place during the course of 1 week, And so basically you should think of the time period of the exam in one sense as being from Monday to Friday of that week. So for instance, exam 1 will become available to you on March 1st, that's a Monday at 8 a.m., and you'll have to submit it by March 5th at the end of the day, which is a Friday. So you'll have those 5 days to open the program and submit the exam. Now, what will actually happen when you open the program for the exam? When you open the program for the exam, you will be presented with two of the possible essay questions. They will have been randomly selected, so you may not see the exact same questions as some of your classmates. And you will have the opportunity to upload a either Word or PDF document response to that essay question. You'll also notice that you will only have 20 minutes to complete the exam. And as I've emphasized to you before in the syllabus video, this is not enough time to write out those essays. If you take a look at the prompts, some of them are relatively long or detailed, and so 20 minutes certainly will not be enough time to write out both. So why is that the case? Well, the idea is that you'll have already written out your responses to all 6 of the essay questions. You'll have saved them in 6 different Word documents or PDF documents. And when you open up the exam program, all you'll need to do is actually upload those documents. The real philosophical work, the work of writing out the responses, will already be done. And I really cannot emphasize enough to you how important this is. Do not open up the exam program until you have all your responses written out. Because if you happen to have the program select an essay that you don't have a response for, you're going to find that whatever you can come up with in those 20 minutes is not going to be nearly enough to garner you a good grade or the sort of grade you would want. So that's the basic idea. You have 20 minutes to upload your documents. You should have all 6 of those documents, all your responses to the essay questions written out in advance, formatted in the way you would like to submit them. Okay, now to drive this point home further and make sure there's no misunderstandings about how the exam will work, I'm just going to take you through the exam program itself. Now, you won't actually be able to see this. I'm on the instructor view, so I can see it, but exam 1 won't become available to you until March 1st at 8 a.m., but I'm just going to open it up and show you what the program looks like so you know what you're getting into. Okay, so when you're ready, you click on exam 1. You'll come down here, and of course for you it won't say preview quiz. It'll say something like start quiz, but in any case you start the quiz. And it's going to tell you you're going to have a time limit of 20 minutes. Okay, and so here's my first question. So question 1, this is word for word, right? So when I say that the questions come from the study guide, this is literally word for word one of the essay prompts. And this is the prompt I need to upload an answer to. So simply scroll down. You can click here, and you can choose a file that you've already saved to your computer. So here I've already got my answer saved, essay 1. And simply upload it, and then you're done. And if you want to check to make sure you have the right document, you can go ahead and click on it again and download it. And here we can see that here's my answer to essay 1, right? And you'll want to make sure you do that just because one common mistake which can really interfere with you getting a good grade is accidentally uploading an answer to the wrong question. And I simply can't give you credit for that because if you're not answering the question you're asked, then to give you credit for that is not really fair to the other students who did answer the right question that they were asked. So you'll want to make sure that the answer you upload is an answer to the question you were asked. Okay, so that's the first question. I've uploaded my document. Now I'll go to the next page where I'll find the next question. And here's the other randomly selected question I'm given. Click here, just like before, upload my document, essay 2. And then when you're confident that you have your answers the way you want them, go ahead and finish the attempt. Submit all and finish. And then you're all done. So it's a pretty simple program. There's not really too much to say about it. Hopefully that gives you a sense of what you're getting into, but I know I've already said it a few times, but I just want to continue to say again because of how important it is and because there's always at least someone who falters in this respect. please do not open the program up until you have all 6 of your documents written out, formatted, and ready to submit, such that the total amount of time you spend on this exam should take less than a minute once you open the program. All you're doing is uploading your documents. So now that we are familiar with the mechanics of how the exam will work, let's take a look at what my grading expectations will be and the sort of approach you should take to the questions. So to do this, the first thing I would say is the basic thing you need to focus on, if nothing else, right? Now, just focusing on this isn't going to necessarily get you a top score in the exam, but the first hurdle you need to clear is to make sure that you answer every single thing the question is asking you, right? That is the first thing I'll look for. I will have a certain number of points attached to each part of the question, and the first thing I'll look at is, did you address this part of the question or didn't you? And because if you didn't, then I can't give you any credit for that part of the question because, of course, you didn't answer. So the first thing to make sure you do is every single thing that's asked about in the prompt, make sure you have a response to it. Of course, the best responses will not only answer every part of the question, but will do so accurately, correctly, and show a depth of understanding. But of course, the first thing you need to do is just make sure you answer all parts of the question. To demonstrate this, let's actually look at one of the prompts. So here is the first possible essay prompt for exam 1. It comes from our lesson on Plato's Euthyphro. So let's read through this a little bit and I'll explain to you sort of what I'm looking for. So first, for each question, you'll see a sort of title here that says Socrates' criticism of Euthyphro's third definition of piety. This right here is not something you need to provide an explicit answer for. It's just the title or topic of the question. It's just what ties everything together. However, what you do need to provide an answer for is everything here. You'll notice that each question is divided into 2 parts, right? And just to avoid any confusion, you are not supposed to choose which part you answer, right? So you're not supposed to say, well, I'll answer part 1 or I'll answer part 2. You need to answer both. There is no choice in that matter. And in addition, every single part of this question in both parts 1 and 2, I'll have a certain number of points in mind. So for instance, the first part of the question says, what is Euthyphro's third definition of piety? There will be a certain number of points I'll have in mind for you accurately addressing that point. The same with the second question. How is this definition different from his second definition? A certain number of points for that. How does Euthyphro's third definition of piety make the discussion of the dialogue relevant for both monotheism and polytheism? A certain number of points for that, right? So I'll be looking to see that you answer explicitly and separately each of these 3 questions in part 1. Then also notice another thing you'll commonly see in the prompts you can find in part 2 of the question. Here it says, explain how Socrates rejects Euthyphro's third definition of piety by making reference to the passage below where appropriate. Right, so I'm telling you here that what I want you to do is explain what is going on in this passage, and then I go on to further explain that to do that, you need to answer and address each of these 3 points, 1, 2, and 3. So what does that mean? You'll want to make sure you address point 1, what's the difference between essential and accidental properties, point 2, and point 3, explicitly and in detail. And because the question said you should make reference to this passage below, you'll also want to reference this passage in your answer and demonstrate your understanding. So all of this is just to show you that what I put in the prompts is not sort of just a suggestion, right? You might compare it to the response paper prompts. There I had various questions, but those are more just to sort of get your mind going, right? If you don't want to answer all those questions, you didn't have to. It was just sort of to help guide you. But with the exam, it's different. I'm really just trying to test your comprehension of the arguments. And so every single thing that is in the prompt, you need to make sure that you address. Now, sometimes students will have questions about how long should my answers be, or sort of what should my answer look like? And it's hard to answer that just because each prompt is a little different, and so each prompt might demand something a little bit different in terms of length. But what I will do is, if you go to the Moodle page for our course and scroll down here, we are in the week 8 area where you'll take exam 1. I have this document here. It's a sample exam essay. So if you click on this, what you're going to find is the essay prompt that comes up here is not something we're covering in this class. It's a prompt I've used in a different class, so the content here is not important. But what you can get from this document is it sort of shows you what I have in mind in terms of length, right? And also another reason to look at this is if you look at this prompt and then you look at my sample answer below, you can see that every single thing that's asked about in the prompt there is addressed in this answer. And so I think it's helpful, again, don't focus on the content, but I think it's helpful to read through this sample response and compare it to the prompt, just so you have in mind what I mean when I say address every single thing that is asked about in the prompt. Also, you can get a sense of length, right? So you can see that my response is single-spaced, and if we scroll down, it goes on to that second page, but it doesn't start at the top of the first page. So we're probably talking about a page or a little over a page single-spaced, which means 2 pages or a little over 2 pages double-spaced. That gives you a sense of the sort of length requirement. Again, there's no explicit length requirement, but when you consider the fact that each of these essay questions is worth 100 points of your total grade, which is a very significant percentage. That means each essay by itself is worth 12.5% of your total grade. You're going to want to make sure that you explain everything in as much detail as you can, right? One thing to keep in mind is that when I'm grading your essay, I don't assume that you know what you're talking about or that you know the material and sort of read my own knowledge of the material onto what you're saying, right? Rather, I'm looking for evidence that you understand the material. And so if things are underexplained or ambiguous such that, I can't really tell if you really understand this or just sort of saying some things you heard in the lectures that maybe are supposed to fit here, if I can't make that determination, then you're not going to get as much credit as you could if you fully explained all the points. I think one way to think about this, which a student in a previous class actually used this expression to explain what he thought I was looking for, is imagine that you were teaching the material to someone else not in this class. So again, just like on the explanation section of your response paper, your intended audience shouldn't be me, someone who already knows the material. Imagine that you're writing a letter to a friend and you're trying to teach them this material for the first time. That's the sort of detail you should have in your answers, and that's the sort of detail that is going to get you a top grade on the exam. To conclude this video, there are just a few more points we need to make. So one point I want to make is about my grading standards on the exams, right? I've already suggested that the first thing I look for is, do you answer everything? And then the second thing, of course, is what's the quality of your answer? How accurate is it? How completely explained is it? And do you show real evidence that you have a deep understanding of the material? And my standards for this, when I'm thinking about sort of my standards or how I'm going to grade that, I do keep in mind that this class is in an online format. Now, what does that mean? Well, imagine that you were taking this exam in a sort of normal face-to-face class format. You would come in, maybe you would have an hour and a half or 2 hours to sit down and write out the responses to the questions I gave you. Now, if you were in that format, I couldn't expect things like well-polished sentences. I would have to expect that you might forget certain things, right? That your answers just wouldn't be as well polished as if you were sitting at home and writing them. But now think about the setting in which you're taking this exam. For each exam, you've had many, many weeks where the possible essay questions were available to you to prepare. Once we get to the exam week, you have an entire week where we won't be covering any material, we'll just be taking the exam. That's just devoted to the exam. So you've had a lot of time to prepare in advance. In addition, you're at home writing these, typing your responses out on the computer, and of course you have available to you at the same time the lectures and the class notes and the readings. So given that, in this format, my expectations for what you produce would be of a higher quality, right? I have higher expectations in this online format than I would in an in-class format where those things aren't available to you. So what this means is that when I read your answers, I'm reading it with the idea that this is someone who had the lectures and the readings and the notes and a lot of time to prepare for this and time to write it out without the time constraints of an hour and a half or 2 hours sort of bearing down upon you. So you want to keep that in mind. Again, take this assignment seriously and don't leave it in doubt on my end whether you really understand the material in a deep way. Just like on the response papers, really try to show your understanding by putting the points in your own words, by using your own examples, by finding ways to explain the points that show you are thinking critically about those points. The second point I want to make has to do with plagiarism and use of external sources. So as I just said, you're welcome and in fact encouraged. You should, in preparing for the exam, rely on the lectures, rely on the class notes. You should rely on the readings. You should use all those things. However, it is expected that you're not going to be using external sources on this assignment, and also that the work that you do is going to be your own work. Right, so if there's any evidence that part of your answer was taken directly from a website, taken directly from some external source, or if your answer matches that of one of your classmates, all of that will be treated as plagiarism and you will receive a 0 for the assignment. And given that the exam is 25% of your overall grade, that is certainly not something you want to do. And again, just like the response papers, it is something I check for and look out for. So again, just focus on using the lectures and the readings and your notes and your understanding, and make sure the work that you present in the exam is detailed, accurate, coherent, and is your own work. Now, all that being said, I don't want the exam to sound overly intimidating or too scary, and I want to tell you that I am here to help, right? If you want to reach out to me in your preparation in the weeks leading up to the exam, and get my thoughts on some of your responses, I am available, provided you give me enough time to comment back to you. I am available to give you comments. So I want to make myself available to help you. Although I do want to hold a high standard on the exam, I also want to enable you and give you the ability to meet that high standard. Now, as always, if anything I've said in this video doesn't make sense, if you have further questions, please do reach out to me, but I will cut the video there. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.